There's a moment in every trader's life when the tape whispers something no one else can hear, a subtle vibration under the surface, a rhythm only the patient can detect. Jesse Livermore called it the ignition zone, that sliver of time before the crowd realizes what's coming. What would you do if you felt a stock on the verge of erupting, yet the world still slept on it? Comment below, would you trust your instincts or wait for confirmation? It was 1907. The market was trembling, rumors circling like vultures. Livermore sat in his corner office, silent, eyes locked on the ticker tape as the thin black ribbon whispered its secrets. He wasn't watching prices, he was watching behavior. Every uptick, every stall, every hesitation told him something about the crowd's mood. The tape, to him, was the collective heartbeat of greed and fear. He noticed something strange, a stock moving with quiet strength, refusing to break even as the market around it sagged. Others dismissed it as noise. Livermore knew better. He understood that strength amid weakness often signals the start of something powerful. It's not the obvious moves that make fortunes, it's the ones that almost no one sees coming. That's the essence of the ignition zone, the quiet before the storm, the accumulation phase when strong hands load up while the weak ones yawn and look away. Livermore believed the market always tells you what it's about to do, but only if you're calm enough to listen. In today's markets, the ignition zone still exists, though it hides behind digital noise, algorithmic churn, and endless social chatter. The signs are there: unusual volume, silent accumulation, price tightness, volatility contraction. It's the same rhythm Livermore watched through ticker tape, just modernized. When I think of Livermore, I don't picture a man chasing headlines or hyped stocks. I picture someone quietly collecting clues, waiting for the perfect setup, that one moment when the tape stops talking and starts screaming. He called it the line of least resistance, the path where price naturally wants to go once the ignition spark catches. And here's the key: he didn't predict explosions. He recognized them forming. Livermore didn't trade on opinions, he traded on confirmation through behavior. If a stock showed strength when it had every reason to show weakness, that was his tell. That's what makes this story timeless, because every trader today faces the same temptation: to act before they understand, or to hesitate until it's too late. The ignition zone is where courage and patience collide, where data, discipline, and gut instinct meet. Jesse once said, "It was never my thinking that made the big money, it was always my sitting." The ignition zone demands that kind of sitting, alert, observant, poised for explosion. When Livermore finally acted, it wasn't luck. It was alignment between the tape, his conviction, and the market's truth. That's how he spotted runaway stocks before they became front-page news. So let's step deeper. Let's peel back what happens inside that moment, the tension, the fear, the hesitation before ignition. Because every trader wants to find the next big move, but few understand the cost of waiting too long or acting too soon. In the next section, we'll step inside the trader's mind, into the conflict zone, where intuition fights logic, and where the ignition zone can either make you rich or ruin you before the explosion even starts. Every trader dreams of catching the moment before liftoff, but few survive standing that close to the launch pad. Have you ever felt it? That pulse of excitement when a stock starts to coil tight, like a spring. You tell yourself you see it forming, but then doubt creeps in. Tell me in the comments, what do you feel when a trade setup looks too perfect? Confidence or fear? Livermore knew that the ignition zone wasn't about charts or patterns. It was about psychology under pressure. He once said that markets are never wrong, but opinions often are. The paradox is brutal. You can read everything right, spot every signal, and still lose, not because the market betrayed you, but because your own emotions did. Picture Livermore in that quiet moment, ticker tape rattling softly, his hand hovering near the buy button. The stock is showing strength, the tape confirming accumulation. Everything lines up, yet he hesitates. Why? Because he knows this truth: the moment of ignition is also the moment of maximum doubt. That's what most traders don't understand. The ignition zone isn't obvious. It never feels comfortable. It demands that you act against your emotional instincts, to buy when it feels too high, to sell when it feels too low, to trust your read when everyone else says you're wrong. This is where the real war happens, not on the screen, but in the mind. Livermore's greatest trades were born out of inattention, not certainty. When he shorted the market before the panic of 1907, he wasn't confident, he was terrified. But he recognized a pattern in human behavior. When fear tightens its grip, the tape starts to tremble in predictable ways. Volume dries up, price action grows hesitant, and then, when nobody expects it, the eruption begins. The irony is that the ignition zone often disguises itself as boredom. Modern traders see it as nothing happening. Livermore saw it as everything about to happen. He trained himself to find stillness in those moments, to interpret what the crowd ignored. That's the paradox of professional speculation. You win by doing nothing until it's time to do everything at once. Every successful trader must navigate this same contradiction, the tug-of-war between patience and aggression. You can't sit forever, or the move passes you by. But if you jump too early, you bleed out from 1,000 false starts. Livermore understood that balance better than anyone. He said, "The desire for constant action regardless of underlying conditions is responsible for many losses." In today's hyperactive markets, this quote feels more alive than ever. Algorithms bait traders into overreaction, social media amplifies noise, and volatility toys with conviction. The ignition zone now hides beneath layers of digital misdirection. To find it, you must think like Livermore, not predicting the future, but reading the present with surgical precision. And that's the inner paradox. The more certain you feel, the more dangerous your position becomes. Livermore embraced uncertainty as part of the edge. He'd say, "It's not about being right, it's about being ready." That readiness, that calm awareness, is the armor a trader needs to survive the ignition. When the moment finally came, when the stock broke free and roared upward, Livermore didn't celebrate, he observed. He knew this was only the first spark. The market would soon test him, shake him, tempt him to doubt his conviction. Because the explosion doesn't just happen on the chart, it happens inside your mind. Every trader watching a stock run away without them knows this pain, the ache of "I knew it" mixed with "why didn't I act?" That's the price of indecision, the tax of hesitation. Livermore paid it early in his career, many times over, until he learned that mastery wasn't about prediction, it was about emotional discipline. That's the lesson of the ignition zone's paradox. The market rewards those who can act in uncertainty and sit through discomfort. But most of us, we flinch right before ignition. In the next section, we'll uncover the ultimate psychological trap, the reason most traders fail to hold through the ignition. Because spotting a runaway stock is one thing, surviving it is another. Here's the cruel truth. Most traders don't lose because they missed the move, they lose inside the move. When the stock finally takes off, when the crowd suddenly wakes up and the chart starts to explode upward, that's when the trap closes. Tell me below, how many times have you sold too early, only to watch the price double after you exited? Jesse Livermore called it the most dangerous phase of a trade, the emotional ignition that follows the technical one. You've spotted the strength, you've entered early, and suddenly, the stock surges in your favor. That's the moment when logic fades and emotion hijacks your screen. At first you feel euphoria, your account balance rises, your heart pounds, and you think, "This is it, I've cracked the code." But then comes the whisper of fear, what if it reverses? And so you sell too soon, locking in small gains while the real move has only just begun. Livermore saw this play out endlessly, not just in others, but within himself. He once admitted that the hardest thing in speculation wasn't finding the trade, it was holding on to the right one. "Men who can both be right and sit tight are uncommon," he said. It sounds simple, but that phrase is a mirror to the trader's soul. In the ignition zone, most people don't fail because of bad analysis. They fail because they can't handle success. The very moment the market validates their idea, they begin to doubt it. They look at profits as something to protect, not something to let grow. Livermore understood that this instinct, the urge to take quick money, is what separates the crowd from the professional. He once described the market as a creature of infinite disguises. It knows your weaknesses, it knows when you're nervous, It knows how to lure you out just before the next big leg. When the crowd rushes in, volatility spikes, and headlines scream, breakout, that's when your conviction gets tested the hardest. Livermore learned to detach from that noise. He treated his positions like experiments, unemotional, measured, patient. He didn't trade stocks, he traded human behavior, and the behavior never changes. Even today, more than a century later, the same emotional traps ensnare traders across every screen, every market, every time frame. Because the psychological trap isn't fear of losing, it's fear of giving back a win. That fear corrodes discipline faster than any red candle. You start checking the price every minute. You tighten your stop too close. You justify small profits. And in doing so, you destroy the asymmetry that made the setup powerful in the first place. Livermore knew that the real wealth in trading doesn't come from being right often, it comes from staying right long enough. He'd pyramid his positions when the move confirmed itself, compounding gains while others took profits. That's the heart of conviction, the ability to trust your read even when greed whispers, "Take it now." And yet this is where most modern traders collapse. They live in a dopamine-driven world, one tweet, one alert, one candle at a time. Patience feels like punishment, but that's why the ignition zone eats them alive. They want instant confirmation, not slow accumulation. They crave noise, not nuance. If Livermore were alive today, he'd say the same thing he always said. The game does not change, and neither does human nature. The same patterns that moved markets in 1907 move them now because people are still people. So the next time you sense that quiet strength in a stock, that hidden rhythm pulsing beneath the noise, remember the ignition zone. Remember that it's not about guessing explosions, it's about surviving them. It's about training your mind to stay calm when your account lights up like a rocket launch. Because in the end, the ignition zone isn't just a market moment, it's a test of who you are under pressure. Will you sit tight, or will you flinch before the move fulfills its promise? That's the timeless lesson of Jesse Livermore, and the challenge every trader must face alone. If you've ever been caught between conviction and fear, between the setup and the explosion, share your story in the comments. What did you learn from your own ignition zone? And remember, the market never shouts, it whispers first. Only those who listen and wait ever hear the call before the crowd does.